Now, matter is everything there is. Almost everything there is. Everything around us, all this stuff here, is made of matter. And matter is made of molecules. Molecules are one or more atoms stuck together. Particles, teeny tiny particles, too small to see. Some of these molecules are big and some are small, and they have different weights. This results in matter having this property called mass, and that makes some things heavier and some things lighter. And this thing we made, this balance, is an instrument to compare the mass of two things. If it's hanging level like this, it means the things in this cup and the things in this cup have the same mass. In this balance, we can compare the weight of something with the weight of water, or the mass of something with the mass of water. And then we can find out the mass of the water by looking at how many milliliters it is. That's the volume of the water, because 1 milliliter of water weighs about 1 gram. I should say the mass is 1 gram. So that's how our little balance works. Now, the size of something and the weight of something are different properties. You noticed that the coins, pieces of metal, the battery, they were kind of small and heavy, and the chips and the paper, it was a little bit bigger and lighter. And if you put those two things together, the mass and the volume, you have another property called density. We say that metals are more dense, and things like paper or chips, popcorn, styrofoam, that's less dense. And so that's why you saw when you had a coin in one side and chips in the other side, it took a lot of chips to make the same mass as the coin. In a dense thing like the coin or metal, the molecules and atoms are smashed closer together. They're really all compacted together. In less dense things like styrofoam, they're further apart. A lot of space between them. Now, when a chemical reaction happens, the molecules of one thing, they mix with the molecules of the other thing, and they change places. And in this experiment, we had the vinegar and the baking soda, and you put them together, and there was a chemical reaction going on. You could tell because there was a lot of gas being created. You could feel the bottle getting tight, and then when you open it up, all the gas came out. That gas was carbon dioxide, and that's what was one of the results of the reaction. And so you could see, though, that after the reaction, the mass of the bottle with all that stuff in it was still the same. If you kept the lid on, everything in that bottle was still there, even though the chemical reaction had taken place. That's called a conservation of mass. But then the second time, if you did it and you let the lid off, then all the carbon dioxide came out the top. And so it weighed less. And it was up like this because it lost some of that weight when the gas came out the top. You could try to do other reactions or mixtures just to see what happens. We had ice melting. When the ice melts, it changes form, but that's not a chemical reaction. And and it also doesn't lose any of the mass. And then we mixed some salt with water, and that was just a mixture, a solution it's called. Salt dissolves in the solution, and the mass also didn't change. So all these things are showing that mass is conserved. When there's a certain number of molecules, that's how many there are, and they have a certain weight, and it doesn't matter how they mix or interact. Now here's the vocabulary. Matter. Matter, that's everything. All the objects, all the materials in the universe. Everything that has mass takes up space. Everything you can think of, that's matter. Molecules. Little teeny tiny particles. It's too small to see, that make up everything that's matter. And mass, that's a property of matter that determines how heavy something is. Volume is the amount of space something takes up. It's big or small. Density is the amount of mass in a certain volume. So metals and rocks, they have a high density. And styrofoam and popcorn, the low density. Physical change, that's when molecules mix or change form without changing their chemical composition. The properties don't change. But a chemical reaction, that's when the molecules mix and change their chemical composition. All the properties of the material changes. So physical change is like ice melting or salts mixing into a solution. Chemical reaction is like the one we did with the baking soda and the vinegar that made the gas come out. It's a different chemical composition.